After 28 years of silence, Prince William and Prince Harry did the unthinkable. They reopened Princess Diana's tomb on the sacred grounds of Althorp Estate. Hidden from the public and buried under layers of royal protocol, the exhumation revealed more than just physical remains. What they found inside left both princes visibly shaken. Fractures that didn't match the crash, tampered objects, and a haunting handwritten note from Diana herself. The brothers, long divided, stood united in shock. One insider said, "It was like the truth rose from the grave. What was uncovered inside changed everything, and it's only the beginning." The day the forbidden door opened. It was the morning of May 15th, 2025, just before 6 a.m., when a small convoy of black vehicles entered the outer gates of Althorp Estate. There were no press releases, no security details visible to the public, only the stillness of the surrounding woods and the sacred silence of Diana's island tomb. Untouched since 1997, the burial site had been kept under tight royal protection, hidden from all but a handful of caretakers. That day, for the first time in 28 years, the tomb would be opened. The decision had not come from Clarence House or even Buckingham Palace. It came from Prince William, now 42 years old, and finally ready to confront what he called the unanswered chapter. As the heir, a father of three, and a man still carrying the weight of August 31st, 1997, he had quietly submitted legal and royal permissions under a veil of secrecy. The paperwork was buried under 9 legal clauses and multiple non-disclosure agreements. Nothing was left to chance. Witnesses on the grounds that day described the atmosphere as unnatural. Birds fell silent. A cold wind swept the grass along the path to the island. One groundskeeper who'd worked the estate since 1989 said, "It felt like the past was waking up." By 6:32 a.m., a small royal forensic team and 3 senior aides stood in a tight circle, heads bowed. There was no ceremony, no prayers, just the sound of stone shifting as the tomb's sealed perimeter was gently pried open. As the tomb door gave way, a long shadow spilled out across the lake. One team member reportedly whispered, "She's waited long enough." For William, it was not a royal duty. It was a son's reckoning. And though he had been told what to expect, formally and clinically, he had no idea what truths were buried in the silence beneath Althorp's soil. The air was colder on the island now, the fog low and unmoving. What came next wasn't protocol. It wasn't monarchy. It was grief resurfacing after nearly 3 decades. William stood alone before the one thing he had been told to forget: his mother's sealed casket. The moment wasn't historical. It was personal. William stands before the casket. At precisely 7:08 a.m., Prince William stepped forward. His face, already pale from lack of sleep, took on an eerie stillness. No guards flanked him, no cameras waited nearby. In that moment, he wasn't the future King of England. He was the boy who'd walked behind a coffin through London's streets on September 6, 1997. His hands stayed clenched at his sides as he approached the lead-lined oak casket, the engraved nameplate faded by time and dew. The royal team paused, waiting for his signal. William nodded once. As the bolts were loosened, a loud metallic pop broke the silence. The lid shifted, and with it came a gust of cold air that surged outward, a breath from the past. One staffer said later, "It was like the room exhaled." William flinched. His composure cracked. His jaw tightened, and for a moment, he looked ready to collapse. But he held still, his spine straight, his grief locked behind decades of royal training. The room chilled instantly. Some described it as a draft, others something deeper. The shift in energy was unmistakable. Inside the casket lay not just remains, but remnants. A faded silk scarf, a damaged rosary, and a weather-worn envelope tied with ribbon. William's eyes locked on the items, each one frozen in time, untouched since the summer of 1997. Every object whispered betrayal. Every detail cut through the official stories he'd been fed for 28 years. One onlooker, an aide who had served under Princess Diana in the early 1990s, described William's face as ghost white. She added, it looked like the color drained from his soul. What began as a procedural reopening had turned into a visceral confrontation with memory, silence, and a mother's unfinished story. And it was only the beginning. The stillness gave way to urgency as forensic experts stepped forward. William backed away, but he did not leave. This wasn't just about closure anymore. The deeper they dug into the tomb's contents, the more they realized something had gone terribly wrong inside the island sanctuary. Inside the tomb. What began as a respectful examination quickly turned into a forensic anomaly. The first to notice was a structural engineer who observed scratches on the interior stone panels, suggesting prior entry. Panels meant to be sealed indefinitely were misaligned, one slightly ajar by 1.6 centimeters. It wasn't time that moved that stone, one forensic officer noted. It was human hands. Tampered stonework, confirmed through moisture decay testing, indicated someone had accessed the tomb, possibly more than once, in the last 2 decades. More disturbing was the state of the burial objects. A silver-framed photograph once placed at Diana's request was missing. The Bible she carried during her final trip to Paris had been partially torn, with its inner binding removed. Dust layers on the casket showed disruptions not consistent with 28 years of untouched rest. Even the arrangement of items within the casket was off, suggesting they had been inspected, or worse, disturbed for reasons unknown. William gave the nod. The casket was carefully reopened under clinical supervision. As the interior was examined, new questions emerged. Certain bone fractures didn't match those documented in the original 1997 French autopsy. Experts noted pre-crash trauma, including wrist bruising consistent with restraints and hairline fractures along the clavicle not listed in official crash reports. These weren't caused by a car crash, a medical examiner whispered. These happened before. Then came the sealed pouch. Hidden beneath velvet lining was a folded envelope, stained, nearly crumbling, yet marked with Diana's initials, DS. Inside, fragmented words could be made out in smudged ink. Betrayal. Protect. They lied. What began as grief had become an investigation. William said nothing, but the look in his eyes told the team they would keep going, and they would not stop. The medical truth buried for decades. The royal pathologist's voice trembled as the scans and forensic charts were laid out before the team at Althorp, just past 9 a.m. on May 15, 2025. The findings were impossible to reconcile with the official 1997 autopsy. Several new fractures were visible, fresh breaks that couldn't be attributed to the Mercedes-Benz S280 crash in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. More alarmingly, the bruising around the upper arms and shoulders suggested restraint, not seatbelt injury, but something darker. It looked like someone had held her down. Medical experts brought in from King's College London noted discrepancies in surgical scarring. There were indications of post-mortem organ removal, incisions not logged in any official French or British report. Organs normally preserved for toxicology were missing, replaced with vague mentions of unrecoverable tissue in the Paget report. A doctor reportedly asked aloud, "Where are the files on this?" But there were none. The records had vanished or been suppressed. Most chilling were the toxicology traces still lingering in hair and tissue samples. Chemical compounds were found that Diana's medical history gave no reason to explain. Rare neuroinhibitors used in high-level sedatives, one of which was banned in the UK in 1996. This wasn't medication, one forensic chemist said. This was something else. A senior examiner, pale and shaken, whispered, "This changes everything." The phrase would be repeated across Clarence House, Parliament, and royal chat rooms for days. For William, the room blurred. Every finding contradicted what he'd been told for 28 years. What was once labeled a tragic accident now unraveled into a chilling web of omission. The monarchy's line had always been simple. Diana died in a crash. But now, the evidence suggested something else. A woman silenced, evidence hidden, and a truth buried alongside her in September 1997. William's next move wasn't royal. It was personal. He didn't speak as he left the room. There were no words strong enough. He'd been a prince for decades, a future king, a soldier, a father, but as he stepped back onto the grass of Althorpe, he was only one thing, a son betrayed. And it was that betrayal that would break him and then remake him. William's collapse and awakening. At 9:41 a.m., Prince William exited the tomb site without a word. His walk was slow, his posture unnaturally rigid. Aides called after him, but he didn't respond. He passed under the estate's west arbor, leaned against the brick wall beside the 19th century sundial, and collapsed, not physically, but emotionally. One witness heard him mutter, "They lied to me." Then came the tears. William Arthur Philip Louis, the heir to the British throne, wept like the 15-year-old boy he was on September 6, 1997. For decades, he had replayed the funeral, the walk behind the casket, the hollow public words, the memory of 2.5 billion viewers, the stiff collar, the handshakes, the silence. Now, it all came crashing back, with one horrifying twist. It had all been built on falsehood. The tragedy was real. But the narrative had been manicured. Grief choreographed, headlines manufactured. And worst of all, his mother's voice, muted. Inside a secured briefing room, hours later, William sat again with the forensic team. His face was ashen. No questions. Just one demand. Tell me everything again. From the beginning, he was no longer in mourning. He was investigating. Aide-de-camp Major Hugh Lorimer, present since William's RAF days, described the shift as military precision under emotional fire. Something had snapped, but what emerged was not collapse. It was clarity. When he finally returned to Kensington Palace that evening, Catherine met him at the gate. No words were exchanged, just a nod. One staffer observed them holding hands for over 6 minutes on the garden bench. William's voice cracked only once that night. He whispered, "I won't let this be buried again." And with that, Diana's son became her soldier. No longer a passive figure of grief, but a man with a mission. The next day brought confirmation of what William had only begun to suspect. Not from a scientist or historian, but from Diana herself. Folded beneath decaying velvet and wrapped in secrecy for 28 years, a single note would give her the final word, and the strength her son now needed. Diana's letter speaks from the grave. Tucked beneath the worn interior lining of the lead-lined casket, preserved inside a silver-framed envelope, was something no one expected to find. It was a letter fragment bearing the initials DS, Diana Spencer. The fabric around it was fragile, soaked partially by time, and sealed under folds of ceremonial silk. When opened at Kensington Palace's secure document room, it revealed 5 partial lines, written in emotional cursive only she could have penned. Handwriting analysts from Oxford University's Forensic Writing Institute confirmed the match within 4 hours. The slant, the pressure, the flourishes on the W all matched private correspondence from 1996 to 1997, including letters to her butler, Paul Burrell. On the parchment, the words "Protect William," "If something happens to me," and "I fear betrayal within" stood out, haunting and unfinished. The letter was unsigned, but her voice screamed from every stroke. For Burrell, long dismissed as a melodramatic opportunist, the revelation was vindication. He had claimed for 18 years that Diana had written letters expressing fear of assassination. "They laughed at me," he told ITV in an emergency interview aired on May 18, 2025. "But I told the truth." His voice cracked. She told the truth. Within hours, the footage had over 6.2 million views, and the phrase, "Diana warned us," began trending globally. William read the note alone, in silence. No aides, no family, just Diana's words, her slanted script, the warning she tried to leave. Witnesses say he emerged 31 minutes later, eyes red, hands trembling, but no longer confused. "She knew," he said softly. "She tried to tell us." It was the moment the story changed from speculation to certainty. Diana hadn't just died. She had left a trail, and William, at last, was ready to follow it. Panic behind palace walls. By May 18, 2025, the revelations from Althorp had reached Clarence House, triggering what one insider called the most urgent royal crisis meeting since 1997. Around 11 a.m., King Charles, flanked by his senior advisors and palace legal counsel, was briefed on the findings: tampered burial artifacts, unreleased injuries, and, most damning of all, Diana's handwritten letter. The king, now frail and emotionally erratic following his own health battles, reportedly muttered only 2 words: "Control it." Inside the Maple Room, the monarchy's crisis plan was activated. Lawyers combed through exhumation procedures, NDAS were enforced across 10 departments, and senior press officers drafted a statement. The Prince of Wales made a personal pilgrimage to his mother's memorial, but the attempt to minimize the event failed immediately. Leaks had already begun, first through digital whistleblowers on royalforums.net, then across major media platforms. By 2:15 p.m., the palace lost control of the narrative. Camilla's reaction drew ire from within the firm. Described by aides as composed but cold, she urged that legal boundaries be set for what William could and could not disclose. "This cannot become another Diana circus," she reportedly said in a closed-door legal session. But others, particularly Princess Anne, were horrified. One staffer overheard Anne telling a royal advisor, "It's not a circus. It's truth." The divide within the family widened with every hour. What had started as a son's private reckoning now loomed over the institution itself. No amount of protocol or press strategy could undo what had been found. Injuries unexplained, files missing, letters buried. Diana wasn't just haunting the monarchy, she was dismantling its foundations. As one aide put it, this isn't just about her death. It's about the system that made it possible. And for the first time in decades, the crown trembled. The palace couldn't silence the world outside. As truth leaked and silence cracked, a digital firestorm erupted, one more powerful than anything the monarchy had faced before. Across continents and screens, Diana's name burned brighter than ever. Leaks erupt, and the media storm begins. By May 19, 2025, 8 a.m., the first full scan of Diana's letter hit the internet. Shared on X, formerly Twitter, by a journalist from Le Monde, the image was retweeted 3.2 million times in 5 hours. In bold overlay, users captioned it with hashtags #Justice for Diana, #William Knows, and The Tomb Truth, the top trending topic globally. They lied to him. What followed was a tsunami of outrage, speculation, and digital detective work. Old conspiracy theories roared back to life. Threads linking the White Fiat Uno, MI6 communications, and Operation Paget's omissions flooded platforms like Reddit, TikTok, and Telegram. A viral video highlighting Princess Diana's 1995 Panorama interview, set to her final words, "I'd like to be a queen of people's hearts," received 45 million views in under 24 hours. Young audiences, previously indifferent to royal drama, suddenly became obsessed with uncovering the truth. Media outlets raced to catch up. BBC, CNN, Sky News, and even Al Jazeera launched special reports. Editors shifted front-page coverage from international affairs to the Diana exhumation files. Tabloids declared it the royal truthquake. Global correspondents camped outside Kensington Palace, desperate for comment. But William said nothing. When urged by advisors to deliver a statement, his reply was quiet but firm. "This isn't for the press. It's for her." That refusal only amplified public respect. Commentators called it royal restraint with moral clarity. Even former critics of the monarchy noted that William's silence wasn't avoidance. It was reverence. He wasn't chasing headlines. He was honoring memory. For the first time in decades, the royal family wasn't just being observed. It was being held accountable. And it was Diana's son leading the charge. The storm outside was loud, but inside William, something had quieted. His path was clear now, and to walk it fully, he needed one thing more: his brother. The feud, the silence. It had to end, for Diana's sake. The brothers reunite. On May 20, 2025, Prince William picked up the phone. For the first time in 11 months, he called Prince Harry. The line rang for 18 seconds before a stunned voice answered. "It's me," William said. What followed wasn't reconciliation, but recognition. Diana's sons, split by distance and pain, were suddenly bound by something stronger: truth. Harry, initially skeptical, listened in silence as William described the casket findings and the letter. There was no spin, no politics, just heartbreak. Harry's voice cracked when he said, "I always thought something was wrong." The two spoke for 57 minutes, ending only with William's words, "Come home. We need to finish this together." It was the first time in 3 years they had used the word "we." By May 24th, Harry arrived at RAF Northolt aboard a private flight. He was driven to a secured location, not Kensington, but a private estate near Berkshire. Neutral ground, arranged by Princess Eugenie. There, the brothers met in person. No cameras, no aides. Just two men, once boys robbed of their mother. They hugged. For a long time. Legal teams on both sides began collaboration immediately. A joint legal inquiry was launched to request access to Operation Paget archives, MI6 traffic records, and suppressed medical reports. Harry agreed to fund a private international legal task force, while William opened direct communication with the Home Secretary. The battle lines were drawn, not against each other, but against silence. Diana's sons were no longer divided. They were united by a shared oath: uncover the truth, no matter who it implicates. And as the brothers aligned behind their mother's name, the monarchy felt the ripple. A crown long defined by secrecy now stood at the edge of its reckoning. Diana's legacy wasn't just echoing, it was rising. A crown shaken, a legacy reclaimed. By June 1st, 2025, the royal narrative had changed irrevocably. William, once the quiet heir, was now the vessel of a movement. He attended no events, gave no statements, yet approval polls hit 89%, the highest for a royal since Diana's 1985 charity tour. Crowds left flowers outside Althorp, Kensington Palace, and even Clarence House. Diana's memory had ignited something generational, global, and unstoppable. The monarchy, now under scrutiny from Parliament and international observers, scrambled to retain control. Aides whispered of possible abdication timelines. But to the public, it no longer mattered. The old system had cracked. In its place stood two princes, one in Britain, one once exiled, now fighting for something more sacred than titles: truth. Royal sources confirmed that William had begun private discussions to create a permanent Princess Diana Foundation, focusing on media ethics, maternal health, and state transparency. The tomb itself, once hidden behind hedges and guarded by royal security, became a site of pilgrimage. On June 5th, over 9,000 people visited Althorp Island, laying candles, notes, and signs. She was right. We see you now. The crown won't bury her again. Some even referred to it as the people's coronation, not for a king, but for the woman who never got to be queen. And in the stillness of one private night, William returned to the tomb alone. No aides, no press, just a son. One witness from across the lake saw him kneel, kiss the earth, and whisper the words heard by no one, but carried by many: justice. Not for the crown, for her. In the still air of Althorp's private island, what began as a solemn memorial visit unraveled into a royal reckoning. The sealed tomb, untouched since 1997, did not hold peace. It held secrets. Inside, forensic experts found evidence of tampering, missing artifacts, and worst of all, injuries inconsistent with the official narrative of the crash in Paris. Among the faded items was a sealed pouch, tucked beneath velvet lining, containing a letter bearing Diana's initials. Its fragments whispered everything the public had long suspected: protect William. If something happens to me, they lied. That moment, May 15, 2025, marked a shift in history. For Prince William, the future king, it was no longer about duty. It became about justice. For Prince Harry, it reopened old wounds but offered undeniable clarity. The feud between them crumbled in the face of their mother's truth. Side by side, they began demanding access to old case files, medical records, and Operation Paget's sealed documents. As leaks hit the media, the world erupted. Hashtags like #Justice for Diana and #TheTomb. Truth trended globally. Candlelight vigils returned. Crowds gathered, and across every screen and border, Diana's voice echoed louder than ever before. For decades, they were told to grieve quietly, but now they are speaking for her. This time, the crown won't bury her story. It's coming back to life, page by page, truth by truth.